Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and a wonderful Boxing Day. Today, I have for you my new Game Week 19 transfer plans. Yes, new. I've changed it yet again. I shall have for you a Game Week review, match analysis, specific insights into players, and a variety of other things. For the regular viewers who have not subscribed, the 37.3% of you, and I actually will check the number tonight and then come up with a new one for tomorrow, or today actually. By the time everything you need to know is out, do consider subscribing, as now we're not so far off 6,000 and it'd be a great number to hit before the end of the year, if not early January. But without anything else needing to be said, apart from the fact, if you like the video, make sure to drop a like on it. Let's get into it. Considering we are promised an abundance of goals following one specific year in the 1960s, I would say this game week was somewhat of a letdown in terms of excitement. We had brilliant prospects for our teams. A lot of our players were playing at home. The fixtures were pretty good. There were no big games, I would say, this game week, so that always means that there's a lot of points on offer, and so many other variables, and including the fact that there were 8 televised fixtures on the same day, meant that you probably expected a more exciting game week with at least some bigger swings. However, it seems to be very close between pretty much everyone's score this week, and thus, to find myself on a 7k green arrow from 39k to 32k, I am delighted with it, because I'm sure it has worked out for the best. I imagine that green arrow will extend tomorrow a sizable amount if Arsenal are to concede and João Pedro is to return. That would be the ideal circumstance, I think, for my team, and if that happens, then that would be quite good. Moving on to the goalkeeper, he really is a bit of a tease, isn't he, since I've owned him? I mean, the clean sheet at Leicester, the haul that was the haul that was lost against Brentford, and again, the 9/10 pointer that was on the cards if it wasn't for that late Fulham goal, and then the other late Fulham goal to take him from, 4 points to 2 points. It happens. It just happens to him repeatedly, it seems. I think this game right here is exactly why I bought him. We concede enough chances whereby that save volume is really there, but we can also keep a clean sheet. Now, I would say in the second half, we gave up a few too many chances, especially towards the back end. And the second goal we conceded is so poor. I imagine players' energy levels was apt, considering how intense the game had been, the fact that it turned into one which was primarily transition-based towards the second half, and the second half. So I understand it, but still a really poor goal to concede. And on another day, he has a haul here, he has a haul against Brentford, and points against Leicester, well, more than one. But it isn't meant to be, and that's okay. Still happy with the decision-making behind the pick. And Sels Supremacy does continue for those of you who stuck with him, so good on you if you did. Now, let's move on to the defense. He's done it again. Lewis Hall has returned another clean sheet, meaning his 28 points in his last 3, averaging 9.33 recurring points per game, and considering the price I paid for him, that is absolutely wonderful. Now, as you'll see in the match analysis section, there are 4 games which I go over. All of the other games at 3 o'clock, aside from the Chelsea, I have not seen a single second of. I haven't even seen the goals for most of them as well, so I can't really comment too much on the performance in the game. I know he was close to getting an assist, but it was just a little bit overcooked for Harvey Barnes, and then it was a disallowed goal from Bruno Guimaraes shortly after. But considering the upturn in Newcastle's form, considering the shift in dynamics on the left-hand side, considering the adaptability that Eddie Howe's shown and the rewards he's getting for that, Lewis Hall just looks like a brilliant hold for the foreseeable future, especially when you consider how well he rotates. For example, in my own team with Gvardiol and Robinson, specifically him and Robinson, right? Me, because I can play Gvardiol in every game, albeit we'll come on to that shortly. And he's just a brilliant hold and a wonderful option for myself. Now, Gvardiol, I would say, was somewhat unfortunate to walk away with the 2-pointer, but there'll be a brilliant strike from Ng in the first half. And aside from that, to be fair, Everton did have some transitions where they certainly caused City some problems, or looked like they were going to threaten. And had they been a little bit sharper, and had the final action, the final pass been a little bit better, or even the decision making on those transitions, maybe they score another, right? So maybe in terms of the whole game, specifically the second half, it was justified that they got their goal. It was just within the first half, that was pretty much the only chance they had. Gvardiol obviously hits the post from a Foden cross in the first half. He had a disallowed assist because Haaland was offside, and just in general, there was that general level of threat. And considering the positions he takes up, and he wasn't even taking up too many of them today, and we'll come on to that later, I still think it's fine, and there's a lot of attacking upside to holding a guy like this. But Leicester were decent in terms of what they showed from an attacking standpoint against Liverpool, and they'll be at home, and City's defense and structure is a lot weaker in that sense. So I wouldn't be surprised maybe if he concedes again, but I'm still bullish, obviously, given it's Leicester away. And look, obviously I would have gone for Munoz, would have been 4 points up and have some cash in the bank, which would be nice considering what I'm thinking of doing, as you'll see in my new transfer plans. But so be it, all good. And then Gabriel tomorrow. I think now, considering the effective ownership of Arsenal's defense, it's over 100%. So I would actually prefer if he concedes. But if he could score a bullet header whilst doing that, that would be much appreciated. And then we can see where we land. I was thinking he's going to finally blank, but he finds a way yet again to put up a 9-pointer, a very healthy 9-pointer, and return 18 points for all of us that captained him, and 27 points if any of you triple captained him. I mean, there's not really much to say, right? The guy's having potentially the best, no, almost definitely the best FPL season we've ever seen in the first half. None of us are selling him. We'll talk about captaincy when we get to everything you need to know. It was a sharp performance. He could easily walk away with a hat-trick if they hit the post twice or hit the woodwork twice. There's not really much to say because everyone owns him and pretty much everyone captained him, hence why his effective ownership was like 199.7% this season. Palmer we'll talk about more in the match analysis session. Started fantastically well in the game and looked a real threat. I think considering the timing of the goal and how Chelsea looked in the first half, you probably would have liked for him to at least generate one more return. And considering the conditions were far more favourable for him this time around than they have been in the past, for example, away to Everton, but it wasn't to be. On the flip side, I didn't hear too many positive things about West Ham in terms of their chance creation today. So for Bowen to walk away with an 8-pointer, and I have seen that goal, like he's in the right position at the right time, right? And he puts it away, so entirely deserving of it. He would be regardless, but somewhat fortuitous, I think, given what I've heard about the performance. And yeah, since he's coming to the side, which I think he's been here for 5 weeks, he scored 30 points, averaging 6 points per game. That is absolutely magnificent. That would, if he would scale that up, that's 228 points in a season. That is absolutely magnificent, and I'm potentially looking at holding him, as we'll discuss in transfer plans. And then the big talking point here would be the blank of Phil Foden. Well, we say a blank, but is it a blank when you get a bonus point? I'm not sure. The fact that he got a bonus point without getting an attacking return and getting a yellow card, considering the opposition goalkeeper saved a penalty and 2 different people scored, I think is very impressive. And I think it kind of sums up the performance, at least in the first half, and how the performance was not really warranting of a 2-pointer. I mean, I think it's 7 chances created. How many of those were big chances, I'm not sure, but Bernardo Silva one, played Haaland in twice, the Guardiola one where he headed it onto the post. And just in general, in the first half, the positions he was taking up was good, and he looked sharp. On another day, this is a haul in the first half. In the second half, he really didn't have too much, and we'll come on to that. But you know what? So be it. Maybe it's a good thing, right? Maybe less people jump on for Leicester, and he hauls huge there. So swings and roundabouts, and you know what appears to be bad is not always so, but I'm very happy with him going forward. If I ever need to take him out after Leicester away, I can do that. And you know what? I can say to myself, okay, look, I targeted the upside here. It didn't work. No problem. Let's move on. But definitely give him Leicester away, assess there, and probably give him West Ham at home and then reassess after the break. Even if João Pedro is to blank tomorrow night, at least I would have got the excitement of the prospect of him hauling and significantly increasing the size of my green arrow. So in a way, I would say that is a win. Also, I heard that in general, Villa's threat wasn't really there throughout the game. Obviously, they had that early red card to John Duran, and there wasn't really too much involvement for Morgan Rogers in that sense, especially in comparison to the City fixture. So regardless of what happens, it really looks like we made the best decision there. And yeah, let's see what he does tomorrow night. Isak, I believe, might have gone up to an 8-pointer. I literally saw something just before I started recording that there were some changes to the bonus system, but I am not entirely sure. So wherever we land with that. But regardless, another goal for him, another return, another price rise tonight, I believe, as well. And it just goes to show that how quickly things can change, right? Doesn't have the great start to the season. People slating him, especially because they started with him in Gameweek 1 and he cost them because he took up a large allocation in the budget, especially when you're facilitating Haaland, which we're not really having to do at the moment. But now, Newcastle are fan form, he's fan form, he's a top player and he's showing it. And like I've said for a while, this is a hold until Gameweek 24 and we can reassess then. Jackson will be a big talking point in transfer plans because it's not just the team's dynamics, which I'm not liking at the moment. It's also his body language and his individual performances, specifically relating to FPL, which I'm not a huge fan of and don't make me particularly bullish in the future. Now, it is Ipswich away next week, and I think Ipswich might be the best team to target at the moment in the Premier League for attack and return. And considering Nkunku's performance as a 9 and the way Chelsea finished that game, considering when Nkunku comes on, it was 1-0, right? And then we go 2-1 down. I imagine the press improves as Jackson has stayed on the pitch. And even in general were on the ball and our open play goal threat to maybe get the second goal, even though he didn't have one of his best games and I'm considering selling him, I still think he would have offered more than Nkunku. And I really haven't liked what I've seen from Nkunku at 9, and we've spoken about that on this channel. So we'll talk about that more in transfer plans. And to be honest, he was the only player like during the games where I was like, I'm not really confident in getting in a return of any sorts. And he proved me right. And recently, as we've expressed, there has certainly been a trend there that when I've been expecting another player to return, they haven't. When I haven't, they largely haven't. We've seen that with the defense week on week now. Obviously, some of you guys are going to mention Foden, but let's see what he does next. And that's a wrap up of the team. Like I said, happy with the game week, happy with the position, and let's go on to the match analysis, and we will see how this team finishes tomorrow night. We will start with Manchester City versus Everton. Now, the commentary was quite flattering towards Savinho in the second half. However, I personally did not like the performance, and I've seen this particular trait with him throughout the season. I've seen it in games at home. I saw it against Southampton. I saw it away at Brighton, and I've seen it yet again. He holds onto the ball for so long. And I put a tweet out about this for him specifically earlier in the season. I spoke about it recently as well. And I think it is so important, especially nowadays, not to do that. And he holds the ball for so long. His understanding of when to pass and potentially when not to dribble. And I mean this with the utmost respect, right? He's a professional footballer in the Premier League, and I have a lot of respect for that. And I understand that he's in and around the game at the highest level each and every day, and I'm not. So he will know many things that I don't. But regardless, from my perspective, I think he holds onto the ball for so long. And what happens is, one, the block's able to then restructure, right? Because they have more time. And in general, on that right-hand side, when Foden's playing in those pockets, he's open because he's good at finding those little pockets of space, especially when City maybe transition quickly. Or Savinho even makes like a little bit of space for his teammates through a trick, but then he just won't release it. And this dynamic on the right-hand side, I think, has cost City throughout the season many a time indirectly. I won't really go notice when you look at the stats or when you look at the scoreline, but in games, you're indirectly missing out on so many opportunities and chances for both Haaland and Foden as a result. I really don't think Foden likes playing with him. I think he'd much rather have like a Bernardo Silva on the right-hand side who's highly more associative in nature. And that decreases the likelihood of Foden achieving a certain level of output as well. Not a variable I considered, honestly, before selecting him, but sometimes things are going to slip your mind, and I honestly wasn't expecting of Savinho starting this game anyway, especially because I thought Doku was going to end it both. But anyway, moving on to Doku, I thought he had a poor game. However, I want to talk about the first goal in particular. Last week, we spoke about having like a door breaker in that left centre mid role for Chelsea against Everton when breaking down this deep block, given the type of profile that Jadon Sancho is and the type of player he is. Doku, a completely different player, showed that when you have this 1v1 ability and you're able to create just a little something, it's a little bit of space, a little bit of separation between you and your man to be able to play the pass for Bernardo Silva, who also is then afforded space, things happen. And I think in general, when we're assessing low blocks, we should look at not only the team's ability to circulate and their passing network, which we'll talk about with other sides like Man United in this video, but also the 1v1 threat they have out wide and using those as tools and leveraging that talent to break down low blocks. Because if they can do that, then the number 9 specifically will have a better chance against Everton, even if they're not the most suited to these type of games. I'll give you an example. Let's take Nicholas Jackson, far more suited to games which are highly more transitional based, and also have that space in behind, for example, like Spurs. And let's take a Nottingham Forest deep block like they did away at Anfield a lot early in the season. That's probably not his type of game. However, you give him 1v1 wingers on the flanks where they excel in that area, and all of a sudden the chances that people can create for him are a lot better than maybe teams who have a striker more used to thriving against these low blocks, but not necessarily achieving the same level of success in that particular game, resultant of the wingers, right? So that's just something to consider going forward when selecting assets. I thought the first half for City was good. They obviously have the goal, right? They have the other Bernardo Silva chance, which he missed, assisted by Foden. They have the Guardiola chance from the corner, assisted by Foden, which hit the post. They have 2 Haaland chances where he gets in behind, tries to go around Jordan Pickford, but the pass slightly overcooked or it's a touch, maybe even a third one as well. And a couple of other instances in the game. So even though there was less or a lack of fluidity compared to other sides, I thought it was fine in terms of what they achieved and what they were trying to do. And I thought in general, not having Kovacic was pretty good. I didn't think Lewis was particularly effective on the ball. And I think if you're going to have him in this side, given the things you concede from a defensive standpoint as a result, the fact that you're not as transition proof anymore. I would like to see more from him on the ball as well. Second half was was poor. I thought they really didn't get things going. And I think a large reason for that was Savinho because he had more of the ball. And it wasn't so much Foden as a result. On transition, I still think they look susceptible. And I know that this is, well, I don't know, but I think this is more of a personnel issue than a structural one, albeit I think they can do better in both departments, both Pep and the players, but it doesn't really look like changing. I thought this might be the game where it changes, considering, after Christmas, this is kind of the fixture swing, it's at home, good feel good factor about it, but it wasn't to be. And yeah, obviously you see Haaland on the screen there, misses a penalty, doesn't really have too much to feed off. And I didn't think Leicester were that bad tonight, and Liverpool are playing at a higher level than Manchester City currently are. So who knows what happens against Leicester, but I don't think you can sell him just because the prospect of him away to Leicester as a differential is probably too good. I wouldn't say a tale of two halves, but certainly different sections within the game. Initially, our man-to-man high press caused them a lot of problems. They struggled with it build up, and we regained possession a lot of times throughout the games, whether that be through them putting balls into their pivot and us dispossessing, whether them having to go longer in the channels and us regaining the ball back, or them almost panicking and trying to go long, and regardless of where the ball fell, we kind of picked it up, right? Or even pressing them high and just winning the ball there. So in the first half, that was good. What was also good, well, Cole Palmer found a lot of space between the lines. They obviously opt for a different approach with two in the middle, and there was certainly a level of numerical superiority on our side, especially considering we're playing a diamond of sorts with Enzo right centre mid, Palmer at the top of it, and then Cucurella like drifting between slightly wider left areas, but also maybe like in those left half spaces. That's that left 8. And you saw, for example, the chances he accumulated, why he did that, given this is his position. And that's kind of where Cole Palmer's goal came from. He was there, he was able to receive, unlike he was at Everton. Colwell simply puts the ball into him, and Palmer scores almost a Hazard-like goal, similar to the one that the Belgians scored at home to West Ham, that wonder goal, right? So this is what happens when you get Palmer in between the lines, and that's why I don't think teams should take that approach. However, eventually the game becomes far more transition-based. Fulham really get a foothold in it. I guess they leveraged the penalty again. So even if there was that space, they could defend against it in a slightly different way. Okay, fine, they didn't man-mark Cole Palmer as much as other sides have done. Okay, fine, they weren't as compact as other sides were, especially in the middle of the pitch and in their midfield. But they leveraged their physicality, and I thought they did well at it. And when that game becomes more transitional based, especially considering this time the front line was Adama, Raul, and Iwobi, and then you had Robinson at wing back down the flank as well. It's quite a lot to contend with. So I don't think that was particularly smart from Chelsea to allow the game to reach that setting and continue in that manner. I think it would have been far better if we just opted for a slightly different game model within the game and cleared the ball a bit more, slow the game down, especially considering we were 1-0 up. We should have got the second goal early in the second half, but from there, just a mature performance going on to win the game in a 1-0 fashion, which is the type of game that you would win if you are champions. And maybe Enzo Maresca was onto something when he said that we're still a young side and we lack some sense of maturity. These are the type of performances where we really should be taking 3 points. Even away at Everton, we should have found a way, I thought. A little bit on Maresca there as well, but it is what it is and it's done. I like what I saw from Neto, and I've liked what I've seen from Neto in the last 2 games. I think he won't get any credit in the media because he's so isolated spatially over there that the actions he's completing aren't particularly flashy. They're not ones which are going to be put in the highlight reel. They're not ones which have directly led to output. However, his ability to retain the ball in difficult situations, to use his body and strength in situations where a lot of other players would have lost the ball, his decision-making, but yet managing to still be positive and direct when he can be. I've personally been impressed. And similar to Martinelli, what happens if you give a runner like him, a passer behind him, a creative behind him, someone even closer to him, and you don't isolate him so much? Well, I think he could play far, far, far better. You've seen the Palmer-Madueke dynamic, and I would like to see the Palmer-Neto dynamic with us going back to almost a box midfield, Enzo at left 8 and Palmer at right 8, and not so much having someone at the top of the diamond. That's what I would like. And I think if we do that, you'll see Chelsea return to some better form, at least when we're not playing low blocks, certainly though in those transitional games. Going back to the left-hand side, which is what I spoke about against Everton, I didn't like it again. Okay, fine, I thought it was slightly better. And the reason I include Gusto here, even though he was playing right centre-back, is because what his role in the side is that right centre-back means that Cucurella now has to go and push on. I personally would like to go back to a box midfield, even if it's to drop Enzo into the pivot and maybe invert Caicedo from fullback, albeit not the greatest solution in the world, just a potential one though if Enzo has to stay on the side. And then at left 8, maybe we play like João Felix, or maybe we move Palmer to right wing and give him a less restricted role than the wingers usually have. Move Neto to the left, and then play like Nkunku at 10 or João Felix, something like that, right? I would like different dynamics against the low block. Yeah, I think these are all solutions which should be considered, because the current set of profiles we have within the team and the setup, I think, is far better placed to exploit teams in those transitional games as opposed to these type of. Say that Fulham played in the most standard deep block you'll ever see. They didn't. But I'm kind of just talking about games going forward. And in terms of Fulham, I thought they grew into the game, right? They certainly got to a level whereby they were decent. I think one thing that they've got, which maybe both sides don't, outside of like the top 4, top 6, they've got a lot of good bench options. Obviously, Smith Rowe is not here today, right? But say it was him. They've got Muniz. Sometimes Adama hasn't been starting, especially in recent times, so he can come off the bench. They have good attacking options on the bench, and again, it's won them points. Muniz scored away at Anfield, and that's a big boost for them. Robinson really should have scored. I think he should have taken the chance first time. But Sanchez made a great save. And Sanchez had again a good game. Had a good game against Brentford. Had a good game against Everton. So it deserves his flowers there. And yeah, not too much more to say. But if Fulham are to persist with this system with Sander Berge out, then for those of us who own Robinson and Castagna as well playing at right wing back, I think that is a big plus. Albeit, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ryan Sessegnon take some minutes, maybe, away from Timothy Castagna on that right flank. I'm not going to speak about the second half too much because, as it mentions there, given the red card, I feel like what we saw there is just not reflective of what we're going to the future, and that's what main match analysis sections are about. Even though I'd say the standard of performance, there wasn't too much. Now, one thing I noticed specifically for you Ahmad owners is that on the ball, Masraoui was occupying that right half space a lot, and it was actually Ahmad who was wide. So it's not really allowing Ahmad to access best zones for him to return or just generally play, and I think that hurts United as well. So that's something to consider. United find it really difficult to create chances, and it's not surprising. You look at their formation. Okay, one, they're not going to get many runners beyond the last line apart from Højlund. That's not the end of the world. But then look at the Liverpool-Leicester game today when they're playing against a side who have like a deeper block. Well, they overload that front line. United aren't really able to do that, considering one, they've got a 3 in the back, and two, they play with 2 10s as opposed to like a more traditional 3-4-3. Like, let's take the one where you've got Hazard and Pedro alongside Costa. That's a more traditional 3-4-3, right? So, okay, if you want to occupy the last line, you can do that a little bit more. But everything is in front. A lot of it is in front of that defensive block. That's another thing. Then you look at the profiles they have in their 10 slot and at 9, and I think that's absolutely fine. But having inverted wing backs, essentially, because, you know, like, at least Dallow's playing on his wrong side, and Masraoui is not the type of athlete where he's going to be, I guess, up and down in the most powerful way, and being able to overlap and deliver those crosses, because like I said, he's coming to the right half space as well, I think doesn't really help their particular dynamic, and I think they would profit from that, especially if those two are going to play centrally. I know Ahmad was playing wide, but you want him a bit narrower. And then there's other things, right? The combinations on offer within the setup, the connectivity of the passing network, right? The patterns of play, the zones occupied from a macro level. And what I mean by that is you just look at what general zones the players are occupying on the pitch, and they're fairly deep, and they're not the ones which are most advantageous in terms of creating chances and leading to returns and just general threat for the opposition. I think the type of goal they're going to score is either going to be a moment of brilliance from someone, one scored in transition, but not too often, or realistically, you're going to have to score kind of a perfect goal, because the amount of things that is going to have to happen within the setup for you to score, well, it's a high volume compared to other sides. So yeah, I don't really like it too much. I thought Wolves were quite solid defensively, even in the first half when United had 11 men. And then we'll move on to the two popular FPL picks, Cunha and Bruno, both very good at this sport, but obviously Cunha walks away with another 12-pointer. And you know what? The performance from a pure footballing standpoint is warranting one. I wouldn't say with regards to attacking returns, there was really that much there for him. But I guess if he's going to score from a corner, then United are going to give him that opportunity to get an assist from the last minute, then so be it. Deserves the points. And good on you, owners. For there is a lot of you, hundreds of thousands of you. Not that how many of you watch the videos. And then Bruno, it's a second yellow card, but he shouldn't really be making that challenge. I still think very highly of him, so I'm not really going to criticize him much. Everyone makes mistakes, but yeah, the second yellow, he probably shouldn't make the challenge. And now I guess a lot of you guys will have to replace him, but at least you've had 1 week's worth of information regarding the Saka replacements compared to what we all had last week. I thought Liverpool controlled the second half so well, and aside from that one Patson Daka chance, there really wasn't much for Leicester in that half. In the first half, I thought they were far more susceptible to those transitions. Like I said, in the last section, they were overloading that front line, and given Trent was slightly higher up, I would say, than usual in the first half, I should probably specify that when I say Trent back to usual role, I meant for the second. You had Gomez in that right centre back channel, and the transitions he was facing a lot of 1v1 instances with Mavridis. And I don't think you really want that. I think it's kind of a high risk game model to have. And I think Slot made somewhat of an adjustment in the second half. / Liverpool also played a lot better and were a lot sharper on the ball. I think going forward, if they are to persist with that, like down that flank, maybe next week, like Somerville or Kudus, they could certainly cause Liverpool some problems there. So I wouldn't see Liverpool clean sheets anywhere close to being a banker, even though they've got such a good defensive record this season. Leicester definitely missed Ndidi in the middle and his aggression. Like you saw that against West Ham, for example. Yeah, sure, they conceded a bunch of chances, but he himself had a pretty decent game. Trent was back to his usual role in the second half, and therefore for him to get the level of output that would justify that price tag, well, I think it's very difficult. And after this fixture, I spoke about it quite a bit. I don't really like the fixtures from a defensive standpoint for Liverpool. So I would actually be looking at taking him out quite soon and spending the money elsewhere, especially if opportunities present themselves. Gakpo looks dangerous off that left flank. And the type of goals he is scoring, for example, numerous long distance strikes, not just in the league, but also the Champions League, it's encouraging because that level of ball striking display, week on week on week, and the fact that he's got those type of finishes in the locker, the fact that he can finish from numerous different box, the fact that he can score headers or cross, the fact that he can generate assists from a variety of different instances, very healthy. And if you are able to predict his expected minutes in a very accurate manner, I think punting on him here and there could actually work quite well, and maybe even benching him some weeks if you have that much faith in the cheap attackers like Rodgers and João Pedro to essentially play more minutes in your side. And in terms of the advanced 8 rule, okay, look, Jones this week, Szoboszlai last week, and both of them, when they play in that role, always look quite dangerous, and I think the system is well suited to them. It was at Feyenoord for the same position under Slot as well. So again, if you ever wanted to take a punt, I don't think it's the worst one in the world. They're probably better spots, but let's say this type of fixture, quite attractive, and you can predict the expected minutes for both. Not the worst punt in the world. And I imagine because it was the last game, quite a few of you watched it, and you would have captained Salah. Gives you a little bit more of an incentive, and you would have had Trent. So I won't go into it too much. I also didn't think that learn. Yeah, let's move on to transfer plans, and then we can wrap it up. I wonder what the record is with regards to how long I've managed to stick to one set of transfer plans. But here we are again, and I have a new one. And you're probably thinking, why? I have not watched Southampton versus West Ham today. However, I heard it was another pretty decent performance from them, especially from a defensive standpoint. Marcus Silva spoke about how against Southampton as well, when last week when they drew 0-0, they needed to create more. They had enough to win the game, but they should have created more. Southampton, since they've got their new manager, have improved defensively. It's clear to see, and they're not playing in the same way that Russell Martin had them playing. The other thing with Crystal Palace is, I imagine there's still a spread of output, somewhat with Mateta, Eze being back, SARR, who maybe I want Eze over SARR, right? As an example, you've got the wing backs as well, and then you've got Nketiah taking minutes off the bench. So with all that being said, I would like to give SARR and Crystal Palace almost an audition against Southampton. I'm okay missing out on those points if it means that, at least I can be a little bit safer and potentially allocate the usage of a free transfer far better elsewhere. Now, it's not only that. I'm also very comfortable holding Bowen, even at home to Liverpool. I don't necessarily think this is a bad fixture for him. I think on transition, West Ham can hurt them. They've got a lot of attacking firepower, specifically in Somerville, Kudus, Bowen, Paquetá will be back as well, and who knows, maybe Fulcrook will play at 9, and when he's on it, right? We saw that in the Euros. So, and last season for Borussia Dortmund. So for all those reasons, and Bowen is such a solid asset, right? Even against the best teams, he's somewhat fixture-proof. I say somewhat because he's not like a Salah where you're going to expect a haul against pretty much anyone. But in these games, you certainly can haul, and you can definitely bank on him for getting a return at a somewhat consistent rate against these better sides. Even though the fixture run is one of the worst I've ever seen, purely to the naked eye when taking a not particularly analytical perspective. So I'm quite happy to hold Bowen and see what happens from there. And you know what? After it's Manchester City, but this is not the Manchester City of old, and that might actually be a pretty decent fixture for myself and for Jared Bowen. The other thing is, I only have one free transfer now, and I quite like to get back to 2 free transfers. So if I want to make more aggressive plays, I can do so. For example, this week, let's say I wanted to sell Jackson because I thought he was going to get benched. I'm going to come on to that in a second, right? I don't think he's going to get benched for a few reasons. Then I could move to Ollie Watkins because now John Duran's got suspended for 3 games. I know Watkins basically going to play 90 against Brighton, 90 against Leicester. Both fixtures are at home. No one's going to own him. There's a lot of upside to be had there, right? But now I can't really do that because I need to, I don't have 2 frees and I don't have the money in the bank to do that. And I want to get back to a position where I can start to make those moves. For example, I spoke about how maybe after Leicester away, I sell Guardiola, especially if I'm bullish on Bowen and I'm going to start him, then I probably will. Okay, fine. Guardiola to Munoz, and I will take the money and move it into to Watkins from Jackson. But I can't do that because I don't have two frees, right? There's another reason I want two frees, and I really do just trust Jared Bowen. He's one of those guys similar to similar to Mbeumo, who can just consistently return. Now, I spoke about earlier, I wasn't too impressed with what I've seen from Jackson. And the other thing that I think I missed out in the match analysis section is it's his body language as well and the confidence he's exuding, which really isn't there for me. And that slightly concerns me. It doesn't look like he's going to haul. Even getting one return looks like a long shot at the moment. But to get a haul, that's difficult. And I want players in my side who all have high ceilings. And I would say they pretty much all do, aside from Nicholas Jackson at the moment with what I've seen. Now, I think Ipswich is one of the best fixtures on the calendar and probably better than both Leicester and Southampton at the moment. And considering Nkunku's poor performance, considering Nkunku did get like 20 minutes, I actually think Jackson starts against Ipswich, and considering the fact we lost. So I'll keep him for that. But after that, it's like Palace away, and then the fixture on starts gets a little bit more tough, for example, including Bournemouth, albeit it's a good stylistic matchup. I can then start to look at other potential options, especially if like someone comes to the light, maybe Mateta, right? He's got 80-80 or like 81-83 in his last two games. So that is something for me to consider. At least I'm leaving myself open. So that's why I probably want to roll this week. I think Southampton have done well enough whereby I will allow SARR, Mateta, and Eze to audition against them as opposed to just jumping on early and trying to time the market to the perfect round. And I'm quite comfortable with Bowen. And I would quite like two frees to maybe restructure the squad in the shape of like Guardiola and Jackson down the line. That is all she wrote for this video, ladies and gentlemen. If you did enjoy it, drop a like on the video. If you are a regular viewer around here who has not subscribed, or if you're a new viewer here and you want to cash in on some of the luck that we've had and analysis, which has helped so many people in the comments achieve such brilliant ranks, just take a scroll through some of the old videos and you'll see numerous top 1Ks, top 10Ks, even some guys in the top 500 as well. And if you want to cash in on all of that, then make sure to subscribe as well, especially now that we're not so far off 6,000. And it'll be a late Christmas present for myself. I shall see you later today for pretty much all of you, because everything you need to know will go up very quickly as a result of the tight turnaround. And until then, have a wonderful day. Goodbye.